is 373, week 2, part 8. All right. By the way, I was able to find that clip of the, I've given suck and know how tender 'tis the milk, the to suck the babe that milked me, whatever. Anyway, the point is the thing we just went over. The conversation between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. I have a good video clip of it that I like. It's Sean Connery, who you guys probably don't know because he's before your time, but he's fun. It's an old TV movie that he was in. Notice his reaction when she brings up the baby. It's clearly a way of her manipulating him, because when she says, "I have given suck," he suddenly gets very tender and he touches her hand and he bows his head a little bit in memory of their dead child. And notice that at the end of that scene, she gets him so excited that he smiles. He says, "Bring forth men, children only." Like she's gotten him to go from at the beginning of the scene, "We shouldn't do this anymore," to being like legitimately excited about it. Shakespeare is incredible at psychology, and he really is able to. Macbeth changes his mind in the course of like one page. And it's very believable that he would. His wife knows everything that makes him tick. I don't think that argument would work as well on me, but it works real well on him, and she understands his psychology and his obsession with manliness and masculinity, and then she brings up the baby, which is again like there's a little bit of a kind of "I don't have a baby, you better give me this" kind of thing. Cool. All right, this is going really well. So we're going to take a look at the dagger of the mind speech. The first thing about the dagger of the mind speech, as I mentioned in the last video, is that Shakespeare never tells us. This is and this happens again with the ghost of Banquo. And it happens again with Lady Macbeth trying to wash the blood off her hands. These three moments, Shakespeare never tells us whether it is a supernatural thing or if it's a hallucination. So it is possible for actors to do it like they're experiencing schizophrenia, and it's possible for actors to do it like they're seeing a fucking ghost. You can go either way. Shakespeare never answers the question, and I love that he never answers the question. In the Dagger of the Mind speech, Macbeth himself tries to figure out the answer to the question. So let's take a look. Macbeth says he's on his way to kill Duncan, and he sees this floating dagger in the air. He says, "Is this a dagger which I see before me, the handle toward my hand? Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not, and yet I see thee still." So usually at that moment, that's the actor, "Let me clutch thee," and then it goes through, and he says, "I have thee not, and yet I see thee still," meaning I can see you, but I can't touch you. I can't have the dagger, but I can see the dagger because my hand goes right through it. Art thou not, fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight? Like, how come I can see you, but I can't feel you? Or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation proceeding from the heat oppressed brain, like I got some kind of brain disease and I'm seeing things that aren't there? I see thee yet, and form as palpable as this which now I draw. So like he's going to use a dagger to kill Duncan, and he can see both daggers equally, even though only one of them is really there. Thou marshallest me the way that I was going, and such an instrument I was to use. And this is I really like this line. Mine eyes are made the fools of the other senses, or else worth all the rest. So he doesn't know if his eyes are fools because they're broken and they see things that aren't there, or his eyes are more valuable than any of his other senses because he can see things that no one else can see. Because again, he doesn't know, is it a hallucination or is it like supernatural, like the witches? Cool. I see thee still, and on thy blade and dudgeon gouts of blood, which was not so before. There's no such thing. It is the bloody business which informs thus to mine eyes. Now o'er the one half world nature seems dead, and wicked dreams abuse the curtained sleep. Witchcraft celebrates pale Hecate's offerings, and withered murder, alarmed by his sentinel the wolf, whose howls his watch, thus with his stealthy pace, with Tarquin's ravishing strides, towards his design moves like a ghost. So he starts kind of talking about how it's midnight, and he's going to go kill Duncan, and it's a time when witchcraft is out, and murder is out. He imagines murder is like the god of murder, like a withered old man with a wolf. And he heads to kill Duncan, and he doesn't want the stones to let him know where he is because he doesn't want Duncan waking up. Okay, that's pretty good. So there's two things I want to talk about here that are real important. One is that I told you two things I always want to talk about is actors and directors, and also masculinity. They're both in there. In terms of actors and directors, I'm just going to do that one first for whatever reason. In terms of actors and directors, it's worth pointing out that if you're the director of the play, you got to make a choice. It's an interesting choice. Now, in a movie, you ever see a movie where somebody sees a ghost, and in the movie, you can see the guy talking to a ghost, and then someone else comes in to the room, and we see from their perspective, and it looks like the guy's just talking to himself. And so in a movie, you can cut back and forth and do both, right? You can show the guy talking to a ghost that the audience can see, and then you can show another character enter, and you can show it from their perspective. And to them, he looks crazy because he's talking to nobody, but we, the audience, know he's not crazy because we know there's a ghost there. It's just invisible to the other person. So a movie can show both, but a play can't. In a play, you got to pick. If you're directing a play, you are going to have to decide, are you going to do some kind of special effect on stage, like have a dagger dangling by an invisible string that's floating in front of him that the audience can see? Or are you going to have him give a speech to the invisible air telling the audience that he sees a dagger that they can't see? It's a really interesting question because it has to do with, it's not just like a limitation. It's not just like, oh, movies are better because they can do both. They can show from one angle him talking to a ghost, from another angle him talking to empty air and looking crazy. The play puts the director in an interesting position. The director has to decide, and the actor has to decide, can the, and this is what I'm talking, this is that audience director thing. It's not just here. Here is, if you're talking about this area, the story, it's the guy's, Macbeth's wondering, is the dagger real or not? But from this perspective, it's, as a director, am I going to have a dagger the audience can see, or am I going to have Macbeth talking to the invisible air about a dagger only he can see? You have to decide what you're going to do. And it raises an interesting question. Because if the audience can see the dagger and Macbeth can see the dagger, then the audience is on Macbeth's side. They get it. They understand. But if Macbeth can see a dagger, but the audience sees nothing, then they are not on Macbeth's side, and Macbeth looks fucking crazy. Which one's the right answer? There is no right answer. It's up to how the director, what does the director want to do to the audience? Is that if the director wants to put the audience on Macbeth's side, they better put a prop of a floating dagger so that the audience and Macbeth can see it. But if they want the audience to think Macbeth's a little cuckoo, then they're going to have Macbeth talking to the empty air. In the clip that I have for you, it's Patrick Stewart, who you may know as Professor Xavier and Gandalf. But Patrick Stewart plays Macbeth. And he has empty air. He's sort of swiping at the, he swipes at the air and nothing's there, but we can't see it. It makes him look a little kooky. It makes him look crazy. Whereas if we can see the dagger, we're like, this makes sense. Just like in a movie, if you can see the ghost the kid is talking to, the kid seems like he's having a normal conversation. But if the ghost is invisible, he looks crazy. It has to do with whose side does the director want to put you on. And you'll have to make that same choice again with the blood on Lady Macbeth's hands, and you're going to have to make the same choice again with Banquo's ghost. Do you want the audience to see what the director sees? Do you want the audience to see what Macbeth sees, or do you want the audience to see what somebody standing next to Macbeth would see? Because only Macbeth can see the dagger. Okay, cool. Or I guess the better example is Banquo. Only Macbeth can see Banquo. No one at the table can see Banquo. I'll talk about that when I get there. Good. Another actor choice, though, I want to talk about very briefly. In the clip, you're going to see of Patrick Stewart doing the scene. Actors make choices about how lines are to be delivered. They pick the tone of voice and the intonation and these things. And Patrick Stewart is one of the greatest actors ever. And it's Professor X, and I love him. But Patrick Stewart makes what I think is a really bad choice here. He's given the line that Macbeth is supposed to say is, withered murder, alarmed by his sentinel, the wolf, whose howls his watch, thus with stealthy pace, with Tarquin's ravishing stride, towards his design, moves like a ghost. So he talks about how the god of murder has like a wolf with him who howls. Whose howls his watch. Now, if I was doing a line as an actor, I would say, and again, he's better than me, but he just makes this error, and it's ridiculous. It's not an error, but I don't like it. But he says, alarmed by his sentinel, the wolf, whose howls his watch with stealthy pace. And that's how I would say it. But the way Patrick Stewart says it is he decides to say, and withered murder, alarmed by his sentinel, the wolf, whose howls his watch. Like, it's such a dumb choice, but I get it. He's trying to spice it up a little bit, wake people up to it in a strange and interesting way. I think it's really fucking annoying. He's a great actor, but great actors are not necessarily going to be great every single word, and it's one word where I feel like Patrick Stewart goes a little off base. It's not my favorite, but anyway, I guess my point is it's okay to laugh at that when you get there. I will see you in the next and final video for the day.